They decorated the conference room with balloons, blue and silver, my company's colors. 43 years, and they'd remembered I liked things simple, no fuss. Janet from accounting had brought a sheet cake with "Happy Retirement, Linda," written in white frosting. My colleagues stood around the table, smiling, holding paper plates. It was a Friday afternoon in late September. I was 67 years old. This was supposed to be the beginning of my freedom. Sarah from HR approached me with a manila envelope. "Your final distribution paperwork," she said, handing it to me with both hands, like it was something precious. "Everything's processed. You just need to review and sign." She squeezed my shoulder. "We're going to miss you, Linda." I thanked her. I tucked the envelope under my arm. I'd look at it later, at home, where I could focus. Right now, I needed to cut the cake and thank everyone for the coffee mug that said, "Retired under new management." I smiled. I made small talk. At 4:30, I said my goodbyes. I opened the envelope in my car. I don't know why I didn't wait until I got home. Maybe I wanted to see the number, the final number. 43 years of contributions. I'd started contributing to my 401k when I was 24 years old, right after my husband Robert died. $25 a paycheck at first, then 50, then 100. Over the years, it grew. I watched it grow. I'd checked the balance every quarter like clockwork. Expected amount, $247,000. I unfolded the statement. I looked at the final distribution figure, $18,432. I stared at it. I read it again. The number didn't change. My hands started shaking. I set the paper on the passenger seat. I picked it up again. There had to be a mistake, a processing error, something. I looked at the page more carefully. Transaction history. Withdrawal. 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 15 separate withdrawals over 5 years. $8,000, $12,000, $22,000, $40,000. The amounts varied, but they were all there, all marked Authorized Distribution, Account Holder Request. I'd never requested anything. I'd never withdrawn a penny. I'd worked double shifts to put money into this account. I'd skipped vacations. I'd driven the same car for 12 years, 43 years, and someone had taken it. I sat there in the parking lot, the engine still running, the air conditioning blowing cold air I couldn't feel. My chest felt tight. I tried to take a deep breath. I couldn't. The balloons from the party were visible through the window, blue and silver, bobbing against the conference room ceiling. Everyone inside was probably eating cake, laughing, talking about their weekend plans. And I was sitting in my car holding a piece of paper that said my entire retirement was gone. I looked at the statement again. My eyes caught on something I'd missed. Each withdrawal had a notation. Authorized by Monsieur Thompson. Michael. My son, Michael. His name. On every single withdrawal. I drove home in silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I just drove. My hands at 10 and 2, watching the traffic lights change from red to green, from green to yellow, from yellow to red again. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat there for a long moment, the statement still on the passenger seat, and then I saw it. Not just his name, but his signature. Digital, processed through the system, but unmistakably his. Michael's signature. On every withdrawal. For 5 years, $228,000. My son had taken it all. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the statement on my nightstand like a presence in the room. When the sun came up Saturday morning, I got out of bed and did what I always do. I made coffee. My hands were steadier than I expected. I poured the water, measured the grounds, pressed the button. The machine gurgled and hissed. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. But when the coffee was ready, when I poured it into my favorite mug and wrapped my hands around it, I realized I didn't want it. I just sat there, watching the steam rise, letting it go cold. My house is a 3-bedroom ranch on a quiet cul-de-sac. I've lived here for 32 years. Bought it when Michael was 10, a year after Robert died. It's modest, well-maintained. The kind of neighborhood where people mow their lawns on Saturday mornings and wave to each other from driveways. I have a small garden in the backyard, roses mostly, and some perennials I planted when I thought I'd have time to enjoy them in retirement. I'd imagined mornings like this. Coffee on the back porch, quiet, no alarm clock, no commute, just time. But sitting there that morning, all I could think about was the number. $18,432, not $247,000, and Michael's name on every withdrawal. I spread the statement out on the table. I forced myself to look at it again. The dates, the amounts. $85,000 I'd given him for college. State University, 4 years. I'd worked double shifts to cover it. $40,000 for his wedding to Lisa, his first wife. I'd emptied my savings account when I was 49. $32,000 for the down payment on his house when his credit was too poor to qualify a loan. I'd liquidated my emergency fund and left myself with nothing. $18,000 for a car when he couldn't get a loan. I'd co-signed, then made the payments myself when he couldn't. $12,000 in legal fees when he got a DUI and needed an attorney. I'd taken a loan against my 401k to cover it. $187,000 over 25 years. I thought I was building his future. He was spending mine. And then he took more. There was a knock at the door. I folded the statement and slid it under a placemat. Margaret, my neighbor from across the street, stood on my porch holding a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. She's 70, a retired teacher, a widow like me. We've been friends since she moved in 3 years ago. She brings me casseroles when she thinks I need one. Apparently, she thought I needed one now. "You looked upset yesterday when you came home," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I saw you sitting in your car for a while. I thought you might need this." She set the dish on my kitchen counter. Tuna casserole. I could smell it through the foil. "Are you okay, honey?" I wasn't okay, but I said I was. "Just adjusting to retirement," I told her. "It's strange not going to work." She looked at me for a long moment. Margaret has a way of seeing through things. "I've known you 3 years, Linda. Something's wrong." I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say it out loud. My son stole my retirement, but I couldn't. It felt too big, too shameful. What kind of mother raises a son who steals from her? So I just smiled and said I was fine, and Margaret squeezed my hand and said she was there when I was ready. After she left, I stood at the kitchen sink staring out the window at her house, and I realized something. I was alone with this, completely alone. I went into the living room. On the coffee table, there's a photo album I keep out, pictures of Michael growing up. I opened it. There he was at 8 years old, missing his 2 front teeth, holding a fish Robert had helped him catch. There he was at his high school graduation, cap and gown, grinning, his arm around my shoulders. There he was on his wedding day, kissing Lisa, looking so happy. I traced my finger over his face in the graduation photo. Where did I go wrong? I gave him everything. I worked 2 jobs to put him through college. I sacrificed vacations, new clothes, anything I wanted so he could have what he needed. After his father died, I was all he had. And I really thought that was enough. That love was enough. But 3 years ago, Michael had brought me papers. Estate planning documents, he'd called them, power of attorney forms. "Mom, you should have these in place," he'd said. "What if something happens to you? What if you get sick? I need to be able to pay your bills, access your accounts, make medical decisions." It made sense. He was my only child. Who else would I trust? His friend was the notary, a guy from his construction business. I didn't think twice about it. I signed. I didn't read all 15 pages. I trusted him. He was my son. Why would I question it? But looking back now, I realized the document was thick. Michael had rushed me. "Just sign here, here, and here," he'd said. I'd signed. I'd given him complete control, and he'd used it. I found an old letter in a desk drawer, something Michael had written 5 years ago, 2019, right around the time the first withdrawal appeared on my statement. I'd kept it because it had worried me. "Mom, I'm struggling," he'd written. "The business isn't doing well. I'm scared I'm going to lose everything. I can't talk to Lisa about it. She's already stressed about money. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to fix it, but I feel like I'm drowning." I'd called him after I got that letter. I'd offered to help. He'd said no, he'd figure it out. And apparently, he had. He'd figured out how to take my money without asking. I went out to my garden that afternoon. I always go to the garden when I need to think. I'd planted roses that spring. Varieties I'd researched, chosen carefully, imagined tending in my retirement. But standing there among the blooms, I couldn't focus on them. I couldn't focus on anything. All I could see were numbers. 43 years, $228,000. Michael's signature. I knelt down to pull some weeds, but my hands were shaking too much. I just sat there on the grass, dirt under my fingernails, the sun on my face, and I thought, this was supposed to be my time, my freedom, and it's gone. That night, I opened the photo album again. I looked at Michael's face, baby pictures, childhood, teenager, adult. I closed it. I didn't throw it away. I couldn't. He was still my son, but I couldn't keep looking at those pictures and pretending everything was fine. So I put the album on the shelf, and I sat at my kitchen table with that statement in front of me, and I asked myself a question I didn't know how to answer. What do I do now? Margaret had left. The house was quiet. I picked up my phone. I set it down. I picked it up again. I needed to call someone. A lawyer, maybe, the police, my bank, someone who could tell me what to do, how to fix this, how to get my money back. But who do you call when your son is the thief? Who do you call when the person who stole from you is the person you raised? I didn't know. So I just sat there in the dark, holding my phone, trying to figure out what to do next. Sunday morning, I woke up early. I hadn't slept more than a few hours. I made coffee again. This time, I drank it. I needed to think clearly. I needed to understand what had happened. So I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and logged into my 401k account online. I'd avoided looking at it for months, years maybe. I trusted the quarterly statements. I trusted the system. But now I needed to see everything. I clicked through the transaction history. Withdrawal after withdrawal. Every 3 to 4 months for 5 years. Some as small as $8,000. Some as large as $40,000. All marked authorized. All processed through electronic signature. I didn't remember authorizing any of them. I clicked on one transaction. Details. Authorization method. Power of attorney on file. Submitted by M. Thompson. I stared at that line. Submitted by Michael. Using the power of attorney I'd signed. I searched my email for correspondence from the 401k company. Surely they'd sent me notifications, confirmations, something. I found a few quarterly statements. Nothing about withdrawals. I expanded my search to older emails, deleted items, trash folder. And that's when I saw it. An email I'd deleted months ago, or thought I'd deleted. It wasn't from the 401k company. It was from Michael, sent 6 months ago to someone whose name I didn't recognize. But somehow, it had been forwarded to my old email address by mistake. A technical glitch, a misclick. I don't know, but there it was. I got another $40K from Mom's account, Michael had written. She doesn't check it. Financial advisor doesn't flag it because the POA is on file. I'm clear for at least another year before she retires and sees the total. I read it 3 times. Another $40K. She doesn't check it. I'm clear for at least another year. He'd known. He'd planned it. He'd studied my habits, knew I didn't monitor the account closely, knew I trusted him, and he'd taken advantage of that trust systematically. For 5 years. I felt sick. I closed the laptop. I sat there for a long time staring at nothing. I needed to talk to him. I needed to hear his voice, hear him explain this. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe I was misunderstanding. Maybe I didn't even know what I was hoping for, but I picked up my phone and called him. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "Hi, honey," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too measured. "I need to ask you something about my 401k. There was a pause. Just a beat, but I heard it. "Your 401k, he said. "Why? Is something wrong?" "I got my final distribution statement," I said. "There were some withdrawals. I don't remember authorizing them." "Oh, Mom." His voice shifted, became softer, almost condescending. "Remember? You signed those papers for tax planning. Your financial advisor recommended it to minimize penalties. We talked about this." "I don't remember talking to Tom about that," I said. "Tom Barnes, my financial advisor. I'd been working with him for 15 years. He'd never mentioned early withdrawals." "You're getting older, Mom," Michael said, not unkindly, but firmly. "It's okay to forget things. Don't worry about it. I handled it for you. That's what the power of attorney was for, to help you manage things when you needed it." I felt something shift inside me. Doubt. Uncertainty. Was he right? Had I forgotten? I was 67. Maybe I had talked to Tom and forgotten. Maybe I was losing my memory. "But Michael," I said, "there's over $200,000. "Mom." He interrupted me. His voice was tight now, controlled. "I really can't talk about this right now. I'm at work. Let me call Tom and sort this out, okay? Don't stress yourself over it. I'll handle it." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, my hand trembling. Had I forgotten? Was I confused? I felt like the ground was shifting under me. Everything I thought I knew about my memory, about my son, about what had happened, suddenly felt uncertain. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. Michael again. "Mom, why were you looking at the old statements?" he said. No greeting, no explanation. "My bank just flagged unusual activity on your 401k account access." I froze. He was monitoring my account access. He knew I'd logged in. "I was just organizing paperwork," I said. The lie came out automatically. "For taxes." "You should have told me," he said. "I could have sent you the files. You don't need to worry about this stuff. That's why I have the power of attorney." "Right," I said. "Sorry, I didn't think—" "It's okay," he said. His voice softened again. "I know retirement is an adjustment. Just let me handle the financial stuff, okay? That's what I'm here for." After he hung up, I sat there for a long time. My hands were shaking. He was watching me, monitoring my account access. And I'd just lied to him, or he'd just lied to me, or both. I didn't know anymore. I went to the kitchen sink. I turned on the water to wash my coffee mug. The water ran and ran. I forgot what I was doing. I just stood there, staring out the window at Margaret's house across the street. She was in her front yard, watering her flowers. She looked up and waved. I forced myself to smile. I waved back, and then I turned off the water and stood there in the silence of my empty house. I went to my home office. I have a filing cabinet where I keep important documents, tax returns, insurance policies, the deed to the house. And somewhere in there I knew was the power of attorney Michael had brought me 3 years ago. I found it in a folder labeled Estate Planning. I pulled it out. 15 pages. Legal language, dense paragraphs. I sat at my desk and read it, really read it, for the first time. This document grants Michael Thompson full authority over all financial accounts, including but not limited to checking, savings, retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and any other assets held in the name of Linda Thompson. Michael Thompson may make withdrawals, transfers, and distributions as he deems necessary for the care and benefit of Linda Thompson. Full authority, all financial accounts, as he deems necessary. I'd signed this. I'd given him complete control, because he'd said it was for estate planning, in case I got sick, in case something happened to me, and I'd trusted him. I'd signed it without reading all 15 pages because he was my son. Why would I question it? I looked at the signature page, my signature. Shaky, rushed. I remembered that day now. He'd been in a hurry. Just sign here, here, and here, he'd said. His friend from work, the notary, had been standing there, waiting. I'd signed. And with those 3 signatures, I'd given Michael the keys to everything I'd worked for. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. At 2 a.m, I got up. I went to the kitchen. I opened my laptop, and I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I typed into the search bar, Elder Financial Abuse Attorney. The results filled the screen, hundreds of them. Articles, law firms, support groups, stories like mine, children stealing from parents, caregivers embezzling, financial exploitation of seniors. It was everywhere. I clicked on one article, Warning Signs of Elder Financial Abuse. I read the list. Unusual account activity, withdrawn funds without the elder's knowledge, power of attorney used for personal benefit, isolation from financial information. Every single one applied to me. Every single one. I closed the laptop. I sat there in the dark. The house was completely silent. No traffic, no neighbors, just me and the weight of what I now knew. My son had stolen from me. Systematically, intentionally, for 5 years. And I had to decide what to do about it. But I was scared. Scared of what it would mean. Scared of losing him completely. Scared of admitting to myself that the son I'd raised, the boy I'd loved, sacrificed for, protected, had done this to me. But I also knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen the email, hadn't seen the withdrawals, hadn't read that power of attorney document. I couldn't unknow what I now knew, so I sat there at my kitchen table in the dark, my laptop closed in front of me, and I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would call a lawyer. I didn't know what would happen after that, but I couldn't do nothing. Not anymore. Monday morning, I looked up elder law attorneys in my area. I read reviews. I checked credentials. I found 3 firms that specialized in financial abuse cases. I called the first one. They couldn't see me for 3 weeks. I called the second one. Their initial consultation fee was $500. I didn't have $500 to spare. The third firm was Chen & Associates. The website said they offered free 30-minute consultations for elder abuse cases. I called. The receptionist answered on the second ring. "Can you come in today?" she asked. "We have an opening at 2 o'clock." I said yes. The law office was downtown, on the 3rd floor of a brick building. I arrived 15 minutes early. I sat in the waiting room holding my folder of documents, the 401k statement, the power of attorney, the email I'd printed out. A woman in her late 40s came out to greet me. "Linda, I'm Susan Chen." She shook my hand firmly. She had kind eyes, professional but warm. "Come on back." Her office was small but organized, diplomas on the wall, a photo of an older woman on her desk. Her mother, maybe. Susan gestured to a chair across from her desk. I sat down. I set my folder on my lap. "Tell me what's going on," she said. I told her. The retirement party, the statement, the withdrawals, Michael's name on every transaction, the power of attorney I'd signed, the email I'd found. I tried to keep my voice steady. I didn't cry. I just laid it out like I was presenting a case at work. Factual, organized. When I finished, Susan leaned back in her chair. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. I opened the folder. I handed her the statement. She reviewed it carefully, her expression neutral. "This is substantial," she said. $228,000 over 5 years, all marked as authorized distributions. She looked up at me. "Did you authorize any of these?" "No," I said. "I didn't even know they were happening." "And you have the power of attorney document?" I handed it to her. She read through it, flipping pages, her jaw tightening slightly. "This is overly broad," she said after a moment. "You granted him complete control over all financial accounts. That's more than estate planning. That's dangerous." She looked at me. "When did you sign this?" 3 years ago. He said it was in case I got sick. in case something happened to me. Susan nodded slowly. That's how these things start. A legitimate reason. But then, she gestured to the statement. Do you have anything else? Any other documentation? I gave her the email. She read it. Her expression hardened. This shows premeditation, she said. He knew you didn't check the account. He was planning to continue until you retired. Linda, this is textbook elder financial abuse. She set the email down. I think we have a case, but we need to build it. We need more than just your statement and this email. We need to prove he acted without your knowledge and for his own benefit. How do we do that? I asked. We gather evidence, Susan said. Everything we can find. I'll subpoena records from the 401k company, his bank accounts, anything that shows where the money went. But I need you to do something first. I need you to go back to your former employer and request your complete transaction history. Every withdrawal, every detail. Can you do that? I nodded. I could do that. But the thought of going back there, to the office where I'd worked for 43 years, to the HR department I'd run for 2 decades, asking for records that proved my son had stolen from me. It felt humiliating. Susan must have seen it on my face. I know it's hard, she said gently, but you need to do this. You need to fight for yourself. So on Tuesday morning, I drove to my old office. I parked in the visitor lot, not the employee lot where I'd parked for 43 years. I walked through the front doors, past the reception desk where Amy had worked for 15 years. She looked up and smiled. Linda, how's retirement treating you? I forced a smile. Still adjusting, I said. I kept walking. The HR office was on the 2nd floor. I took the stairs. I'd always taken the stairs. When I reached the HR department, I stood in the doorway for a moment. This had been my office. My desk was still there in the corner by the window. Someone else sat at it now, a woman in her 30s, typing on the computer, a photo of 2 kids on the desk where I used to keep my coffee mug. I felt like a stranger in a place I'd called home for 4 decades. Sarah, the current HR director, looked up. Linda, what brings you back? She stood up, smiling. Already miss us? I need to request something, I said. My voice sounded flat, professional. I need my complete 401k transaction history, every withdrawal, every detail, going back 5 years. Sarah's smile faded slightly. Is something wrong? I just need the records, I said. I didn't elaborate. I didn't want to explain. Not here. Not in front of people who'd been my colleagues, my friends. Sarah nodded. She sat back down at her computer. She typed. She clicked. I can pull that up for you now, she said. Give me a few minutes. She printed the documents. 15 pages. Transaction after transaction. She handed them to me in a manila folder. Linda, she said quietly, if something's wrong, if you need help, you can tell me. Thank you, I said. I took the folder. I left. I walked back down the stairs, past Amy at reception, out to my car, and then I sat there in the visitor parking lot, in the place where I used to park every single day for 43 years, and I opened the folder, 15 withdrawals, dates, amounts, authorization codes. I went through them one by one. December 15th, 2021, $18,000. My birthday. He'd withdrawn $18,000 on my birthday. March 8th, 2022, $15,000. The day after Michael's business had filed for a loan modification, I'd seen that in the email threads. October 3rd, 2023, $22,000. The week his investment property went into foreclosure, every withdrawal matched something in his life, something he needed, something he wanted, and every single one was marked authorized by power of attorney, M. Thompson. I sat there in that office, my old office, holding those papers, and something shifted inside me. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't doubting myself. I was looking at proof, black and white. 15 withdrawals over 5 years, $228,568 to be exact. I'd spent 43 years building this retirement. I'd processed forms like these for other employees, distributions, hardship withdrawals, retirement accounts. I'd helped people plan for their futures. And now I was sitting on this side of the desk, the victim side, looking at my own stolen money, 43 years, and it came down to this stack of papers, this evidence of my son's betrayal, but I needed more. Susan had been clear. One set of records wasn't enough. We needed to build a comprehensive case. So over the next 2 weeks, I gathered everything I could. Susan subpoenaed the 401k company's records. What came back was revealing. Digital authorization forms submitted online, each one supposedly signed by me electronically. But the IP addresses didn't match my home internet. They matched Michael's address. The timestamps showed the forms were submitted during business hours, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., when I was at work. I couldn't have submitted them. I didn't even know how to submit them. Susan's IT consultant analyzed the data. These forms were definitely not submitted by your client, he wrote in his report. Wrong location, wrong device, wrong access pattern. Susan also subpoenaed Michael's bank records. The deposits matched the withdrawal dates perfectly. $8,000 withdrawn from my 401k on January 4th, 2020, $8,000 deposited into Michael's checking account on January 6th, $40,000 withdrawn on May 15th, 2021, $40,000 deposited into his account on May 17th. The trail was clear. The money went from my retirement account directly into his personal account. And from there, the ATM records told the story. Riverside Casino, $500, $1,000, $2,000, over and over, $140,000 in casino withdrawals over 5 years. He'd gambled it away. I also needed professional validation. Susan suggested I contact my CPA and my financial advisor, people who knew my financial situation, who could testify that I wouldn't have authorized these withdrawals. I called Tom Barnes first. Tom had been my financial advisor since 2010. I told him everything. Linda, he said, his voice heavy with disbelief. I never recommended early 401k withdrawals, ever. Your retirement plan was designed to remain untouched until you were 67. These withdrawals destroyed everything we'd built. He agreed to provide a written statement. My CPA, Janet Meyer, was equally shocked. She reviewed my tax returns from 2019 through 2024. These withdrawals should have been reported, she said. Early distributions from a 401k are taxable. They should have shown up on your 1099-R forms. They didn't, which means either the 401k company didn't report them, unlikely, or someone intercepted the paperwork. Either way, this wasn't legitimate financial planning. This was theft. She provided a statement, too. By mid-October, Susan had compiled everything into a 3-inch binder, 5 categories of evidence: financial records, my 401k statements, Michael's bank deposits, casino ATM withdrawals, legal documents, the power of attorney, property records showing Michael had bought an investment property in 2021 with a $60,000 down payment, the same amount withdrawn from my account that month. Digital forensics, the IP addresses, timestamps, access patterns that proved I hadn't submitted those authorization forms. Professional testimony. Statements from Tom and Janet confirming I wouldn't have authorized the withdrawals and that there was no tax benefit. And one more thing, the property itself. Michael's investment property was in foreclosure, but there was still about $12,000 in equity. Susan had already filed a lien against it. I sat in Susan's office looking at that binder, all that evidence, all that proof. "This is strong," Susan said, "but you need to know, even with all this, we might not recover everything. A lot of that money is gone, gambled away, spent. The best we can hope for is partial restitution and legal consequences if you want to pursue them." "How much can I recover?" I asked. "Hard to say. The property equity, $12,000. If we can garnish his wages, maybe another $50,000 to $75,000 over time. So realistically, 60 to 90,000 maybe, out of 228,000. The number hit me like a weight. 60 to 90,000 out of 228. That meant I'd lose 140,000 minimum, forever, gone. I felt something crack inside me, not anger, not anymore, just grief. But we have to try, right? I said. Yes, Susan said, we have to try. She looked at me across her desk, that 3-inch binder between us, the evidence of my son's betrayal, documented and organized and ready to present to a court. Linda, you have a strong case, but you need to decide something. Do you want to pursue criminal charges or just civil restitution? Because once we file, there's no going back. Your relationship with Michael will never be the same. I looked at her. I looked at the binder, and I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. 43 years of work, $228,000, Michael's signature on every withdrawal, and I realized the relationship was already gone. It died the moment he took the first dollar without asking. I just hadn't known it yet. I want both, I said. Civil for restitution, criminal as leverage. I want him to understand that this isn't okay, that I won't just let it go. Susan nodded. Then let's build the case. Susan said she'd draft the paperwork and call me in a few days. I drove home. That was a Wednesday afternoon. I spent the next 3 days thinking, really thinking, about what it would mean to file a case against my own son, about what I'd lose if I did, about what I'd already lost. I kept coming back to the same question. When did it start? When did the boy I raised become someone who could steal from me? I thought about Christmas, 2015, 8 years ago. Michael had brought Lisa and the kids to my house. Emma was 4, Jake was 2. We decorated the tree together, Michael hanging lights while I handed him ornaments, the kids running around with too much sugar in their systems. I'd made a pot roast. We'd eaten at the dining room table, all of us together. After dinner, Michael had helped me hang the outdoor lights. We'd stood in the cold December air, our breath visible, and he'd hugged me. "Thanks for everything, Mom," he'd said. "You're the best." I'd hugged him back. "I'd do anything for you, honey." I meant it. I would have done anything for him. But that was then. That was before the withdrawals started, before the lies, before he looked at my retirement account and saw an opportunity instead of his mother's future. I thought about another moment too, 18 years ago. Robert's funeral. Michael was 24. He'd stood at the gravesite crying, not just tears, but the kind of grief that shakes your whole body. Afterward, at the house, I'd held him. "It's just us now," I'd told him, "but we'll be okay, I promise." He'd looked at me with red eyes and said, "I'll take care of you when you're older, Mom, I promise." I'd believed him. For 18 years, I'd carried that promise in my heart. He'd take care of me, but instead, he'd taken from me. He'd broken that promise in the worst possible way. I sat in my garden on Saturday morning. The roses I'd planted in the spring were still blooming, but some of them had started to wilt, brown edges on the petals, spent blooms hanging heavy on the stems. I brought out my pruning shears. I started deadheading the old flowers, cut them back to make room for new growth. That's what you do with roses. You remove what's dead so the plant can focus its energy on what's alive. I knelt there in the dirt, the sun warm on my back, and I realized something. I'd spent 42 years protecting Michael from the grief of losing his father, from his own mistakes, from consequences. When he got the DUI, I paid for the lawyer. When his credit was bad, I co-signed the loan. When his business failed, I gave him money. Every time he stumbled, I caught him. I thought that was love. I thought that was what a good mother did, but I'd never protected myself. I'd given and given and given, and in doing that, I'd taught him that he could take, that there would always be more, that I would always say yes. I'd enabled him. Not intentionally, but the result was the same. He'd looked at my unconditional love and seen unlimited access, And when access wasn't enough, when I wasn't giving fast enough, he'd just taken it, without asking, without my knowledge, for 5 years. I sat back on my heels, a handful of dead rose blooms in my gloved hand. I looked at them, petals that had been beautiful once, now just brown and curled, taking up space, draining resources from the living plant. Some things can't be saved. You cut them back, you let them go, and you focus on what's left, what can still grow. I went inside. I washed my hands. I sat at my kitchen table. The house was quiet, and I thought about everything Susan had said. Once we file, there's no going back. Your relationship with Michael will never be the same. But here's what I realized, sitting there in the silence. The relationship was already over. It died the moment he took that first withdrawal. I just hadn't known it yet. I'd been mourning a son who didn't exist anymore. Or maybe he'd never existed the way I thought he did. Maybe I'd loved an idea of him, the boy he'd been, the man I'd hoped he'd become. But the reality, the man who stole $228,000 from his mother and called it handling things for her, that man wasn't someone I could trust. That man wasn't someone I could have in my life. I'd spent 42 years choosing him over myself. Every time, every decision, his college over my savings, his wedding over my emergency fund, his house over my security, his mistakes over my peace. Always him, never me. And what had that gotten me? $18,000 in my retirement account, a son who monitored my account access to make sure I didn't catch him stealing, and a future I couldn't afford. I sat at my kitchen table. The house was quiet. 42 years of motherhood came down to this choice: protect him or protect myself. I chose myself, for the first time. On Monday morning, I called Susan. "File the case," I said, "civil complaint for restitution, and attach the criminal complaint. I want him to understand that this is serious." "Are you sure?" Susan asked. "I'm sure." Over the next week, I took action. Real action. I called my former employer and asked them to confirm in writing that I'd never authorized any withdrawals during work hours. They did. I contacted the bank and changed my passwords on every account. I filed paperwork with the county clerk to revoke the power of attorney. I met with Tom, my financial advisor, and we developed a new retirement plan. A realistic one, based on $18,000 instead of $247,000. It hurt to look at those numbers, to see how much I'd lost. But Tom was patient. "You can still retire," he said. "It won't look like you planned, but if you work part-time for a few years, if you downsize your house, if you're careful, you can make it work." I nodded. I could downsize. I could work part-time. I could be careful. I'd been careful my whole life. I also updated my will. I removed Michael as executor. I named Lisa and my grandchildren as beneficiaries instead. If something happened to me, Michael wouldn't control anything. Not my money, not my medical care, not my assets. Nothing. And I set up a small trust for Emma and Jake. Whatever I had left when I died would go to them for college. Not to their father. To them. Directly. Protected. Susan filed the papers on a Monday in late October. By Tuesday afternoon, Michael's attorney called her. He wanted to talk settlement. Susan called me. "They're rattled," she said. "They didn't think you'd actually file. They want to negotiate." "Tell them no," I said. "I don't want to settle before we even try. I want mediation. I want to sit across a table from him and show him the evidence. I want him to look at what he did." "Are you sure?" Susan asked. "Mediation means facing him, hearing his excuses, seeing him try to justify this." "I know," I said, "but I need to do it. I need to see his face when we present the evidence. I need to know that he knows what he did to me." Susan scheduled the mediation for a Thursday in mid-November, 10 in the morning, 6.5 weeks away. I had 6 weeks to prepare, 6 weeks to decide what I'd say when I saw him, 6 weeks to steel myself for the moment when I'd have to choose one more time between being his mother and being my own advocate. but this time, I already knew which one I'd choose. The next 6 weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, discovery, depositions, asset searches. Susan's forensic accountant traced every dollar Michael had taken. The investment property was in foreclosure. Only $12,000 in equity remained. His checking account was nearly empty. His 401k? He'd borrowed against it and owed penalties. The casinos kept no records beyond 2 years, but credit card statements filled in the gaps. $140,000. Gone. Gambled away. Susan presented it all to the mediator in a 3-inch binder, but the more we uncovered, the clearer it became. I wasn't going to get everything back. Most of it was simply gone. In early November, Michael's attorney sent a letter, an offer. $50,000 paid over 10 years, $416 a month. Susan called me. "That's 22% of what he stole," she said. Her voice was tight. "It's insulting." I sat at my kitchen table looking at the offer on paper. Part of me wanted to take it, just to be done, to end this nightmare and move forward. "Maybe I should accept it," I said. "Maybe this is the best I can do." "Linda," Susan's voice was firm, "you deserve more than this. Don't settle out of fear. We have a strong case." I talked to Margaret about it that evening. She'd been checking on me almost daily since I'd finally told her what was happening. She came over with coffee and sat at my kitchen table. "Don't you dare take that offer," she said. "You worked 43 years for that money. He stole it. He doesn't get to decide how much he pays back." I rejected the offer. Susan sent back a counter-proposal. We proceed to mediation as scheduled. No settlement without sitting across the table first. 2 weeks before the mediation, something unexpected happened. Lisa called me. Michael's ex-wife. I hadn't heard from her in 2 years, not since she and Michael had divorced. "Linda," she said, "I heard about the lawsuit. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you years ago." "About what?" I asked. "About the gambling," she said. Her voice cracked slightly. "That's why I left him. He was stealing from me, too, not from accounts. We didn't have joint accounts by the end, but he'd take money from my purse, forge my signature on checks. I tried to tell you once, remember? You said I was just angry about the divorce." I did remember, vaguely. A phone call 3 years ago. Lisa had said something about Michael having a problem. I'd brushed it off, defended him. "I'm sorry," I said. "I should have listened." "You weren't ready to hear it," Lisa said. "I get that, but I'm ready to help now. If you need me to testify about his gambling addiction, about the pattern of financial abuse, I will." "Thank you," I said, and then I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. "How are Emma and Jake? Do they ask about me?" "All the time," Lisa said. Her voice softened. "Michael told them you were too sick to see them, but Linda, you're not sick. Can I bring them to visit? They miss their grandma." That Saturday, Lisa brought the kids to my house. Emma was 12 now. Jake was 10. They'd grown so much. Emma ran up and hugged me. "Grandma, Dad said you were in the hospital, but you look fine." "I'm not sick," I said, hugging her back. "Your dad and I had a disagreement. That's why you haven't seen me, but I'm here, and I miss you." We spent the afternoon together. I showed them the garden. We baked cookies, chocolate chip, Emma's favorite. Jake told me about his soccer team. Emma told me about 7th grade, and I realized something. Michael hadn't just stolen my money. He'd stolen time with my grandchildren, 2 years of their lives. Birthdays, holidays, soccer games, school events, all gone. Because he'd isolated me to hide what he was doing. Before they left, I pulled Lisa aside. "Thank you for bringing them," I said. "I know this is complicated, but I want to be part of their lives again." "You are part of their lives," Lisa said. "You always have been. Michael just made it harder." She squeezed my hand. "The kids need you. I need you. We'll figure out a schedule. Twice a month, more if you want." After they left, I sat in my living room, the house smelling like cookies, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for getting my money back, not for fixing things with Michael, But for this, for connection, for family, for something good to come out of all this pain, Margaret invited me to a support group at the senior center the next week. "It's for people who've experienced financial abuse," she said. "I volunteer there sometimes. I think you should come, just to listen." I didn't want to go. I didn't want to sit in a room with strangers and talk about how my son had stolen from me. But Margaret was persistent, so I went. There were 8 of us in a circle. A social worker named Patricia led the group. She was in her 50s, calm, professional. "This is a safe space," she said. "Whatever you share stays here, and you only share what you're comfortable sharing." I listened to their stories. A woman in her 70s, her caregiver had stolen $90,000. She'd never recovered any of it. A man in his 60s, his daughter had forged checks for years. They were estranged now. A woman in her mid-70s, she'd been scammed by someone she'd met online, lost her entire retirement savings. A man in his 80s, his son-in-law had abused power of attorney, similar to my situation. He'd gotten about 30% back through a lawsuit. When it was my turn, I spoke. "My son took over $200,000 from my 401k, I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. "We're in mediation in 2 weeks. I don't know what's going to happen." The group was quiet for a moment. Then the woman who'd lost everything to the online scam spoke. "I wish I'd fought back like you are," she said. "You're brave." "I don't feel brave," I said. "I feel scared." Patricia, the group leader, smiled gently. "Brave doesn't mean you're not scared. Brave means you do it anyway." After the meeting, 3 people came up to me. They wanted to know the name of my attorney. They wanted to know how I'd built my case. They wanted to know if it was too late for them. I gave them Susan's card. I told them it's never too late to try. And I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting to show that it's possible, that you don't have to accept it, that even when it's your own family, you can say no. But then things got worse. 1 week before the mediation, I received a letter in the mail, plain white envelope, no return address, typed, not handwritten. I opened it at my kitchen table. The message was short. "Your son owes dangerous people money. Drop the case or you'll regret it." My hands started shaking. I called Susan immediately. "I just got a threat," I said. I read her the letter. "What do I do?" "Do not respond," Susan said. Her voice was sharp, focused. "Don't contact Michael. Don't change anything. I'm calling the police right now. We're reporting this." The police came to my house that afternoon. They took the letter. They took my statement. They said they'd investigate. 2 days later, they called me back. "We traced the letter," the detective said. "It was sent from an online anonymizing service. But we tracked the payment method. It was your son. He sent it himself. It's not a real threat. He was trying to scare you into dropping the case." I sat down. I felt something shift inside me. Not fear anymore, but something closer to resolve. He'd tried to intimidate me. He'd tried to use fear to control me one more time. And that told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't sorry. He was desperate, cornered, and he'd do anything to avoid consequences. "What happens now?" I asked the detective. "We filed a report for intimidation. It strengthens your case. Your attorney will want this documentation for the mediation." Susan added the police report to the evidence binder. "He's panicking," she said when I called her. "That's good for us. It means he knows the case is strong." During the discovery process, something else came to light. Michael hadn't just stolen from me. Lisa's parents, Emma and Jake's other grandparents, had loaned Michael $30,000 3 years ago. He'd never paid it back. They hadn't pursued legal action. They'd just written it off, but when Susan contacted them as potential witnesses, they told her everything. A pattern. Michael borrowing money from family, promising to pay it back, never following through. I felt sick. How many people had he hurt? How many people had he lied to? But there was one more complication. Michael's attorney filed a motion requesting that I undergo a psychological evaluation. They wanted to argue that I was mentally unfit to manage my own finances, that I had authorized the withdrawals and simply didn't remember. Susan was furious. "This is a stall tactic," she said, "and it's offensive, but we have to respond." I underwent the evaluation. A clinical psychologist interviewed me for 2 hours. She asked me questions about my memory, my decision-making, my daily routines. She gave me cognitive tests. A week later, her report came back. Linda Thompson shows no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or memory impairment. She is fully competent to manage her financial affairs. Her recall of events is detailed, consistent, and credible. Susan sent the report to Michael's attorney with a pointed note. "Your client's mother is mentally sharp. Perhaps he's the one who should be evaluated." The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday. The Wednesday before, Susan and I met at her office for 3 hours. She prepped me. She walked me through what would happen. "The mediator will be neutral," she said. "She's not a judge. She's there to facilitate a settlement. You'll present your case. Michael's attorney will respond. There will be negotiations. It might take hours." "What if he tries to make me feel guilty?" I asked. "What if he cries? What if he says he's sorry?" Susan looked at me steadily. "Then you remember what you're there for. You're there for justice, for accountability, for $228,000 he stole. He'll try to manipulate you. He'll try to play on your emotions. That's what he's always done, but you've prepared for this. You know what he did. You have the evidence. Don't let him take your resolve like he took your money." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The mediation was tomorrow, 10 in the morning. I'd sit across a table from my son. I'd present evidence of what he'd done. I'd have to watch him squirm, or cry, or lie. And then I'd have to make a decision. Accept whatever settlement was offered, or push for more. Hold him accountable, or let him off easy. I thought about that first withdrawal, 5 years ago, $8,000. Had he hesitated before he submitted that authorization form? Had he thought about what he was doing? Had he felt guilty? Or had it been easy? Just a click, just a signature, just his mother's money, money she'd worked for, saved, protected, money she needed for her future. Had he thought about that? Had he cared? I got up at 2 in the morning. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I sat at the table in the dark, and I asked myself one more time, can I do this? Can I sit across from my son and demand that he pay for what he did? And the answer, sitting there in the quiet of my empty house, was yes, I could do it. I had to do it. Because if I didn't, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. The mediation was at 10 a.m. Susan would pick me up at 9, 6 hours from now. I went back to bed. I didn't sleep, but I lay there in the dark, and I steeled myself for what was coming. Tomorrow, I would face my son. Tomorrow, I would show him what he'd done to me. Tomorrow, I would find out if justice was possible, or if love, even broken, betrayed love, would make me let him off easy one more time. But sitting there in the dark, feeling the weight of what was coming, I realized something. The decision had already been made. I'd made it in my garden when I'd pruned those roses. I'd made it at my kitchen table when I'd chosen myself. I'd made it every time I'd gathered evidence, hired an attorney, filed a case. I wasn't going to let him off easy. Not anymore. Tomorrow he'd have to face what he'd done. And so would I. Susan picked me up at 9. We didn't talk much during the drive downtown. She'd gone over everything yesterday. There was nothing left to say except the things that would be said in that conference room. We parked in the garage beneath her office building. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The mediation was in a conference room down the hall from her office. Neutral territory, she'd explained. Not her space, not Michael's attorney's space. Somewhere in between. We arrived at 9:45, 15 minutes early. The mediator was already there, setting up. Patricia Gomez, late 60s, retired judge. She shook my hand. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for being here." Her voice was calm, professional. She gestured to the chairs around a large conference table. "You can sit anywhere you'd like. We'll begin at 10. Susan and I sat on one side of the table. She placed her briefcase on the floor beside her. The 3-inch binder sat in front of her, closed. Evidence. 5 years of withdrawals, bank records, casino ATM receipts, digital forensics, professional testimony, police report, all of it organized, documented, ready. At 9:58, Michael arrived with his attorney. I heard their voices in the hallway before I saw them. Michael's attorney came in first, David Ross, mid-50s, gray suit, tired eyes. And then Michael, my son. I hadn't seen him in 6 months. He looked terrible, thinner. Dark circles under his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled. He wouldn't look at me. He sat down across the table, his eyes fixed on the wood grain in front of him. His attorney sat beside him. Patricia took the seat at the head of the table. "Good morning," Patricia said. "We're here today to facilitate a settlement discussion in the matter of Linda Thompson versus Michael Thompson. This is a confidential proceeding. What's said here stays here. My role is to help both parties reach an agreement if possible. I'm not a judge. I don't make rulings, but I will guide the conversation and offer my perspective when appropriate." She looked at me, then at Michael. "The goal today is resolution. Both parties must negotiate in good faith. Does everyone understand?" We all nodded. Patricia turned to Susan. "Counselor, would you like to present your client's case?" Susan opened the binder. She pulled out the first document, my 401k statement. She placed it in the center of the table. "Linda Thompson worked 43 years for the same company," Susan began. "She contributed to her 401k every paycheck since she was 24 years old. When she retired last September, she expected to have $247,000. She had $18,432. Susan pulled out the transaction history. She laid it beside the statement. 15 withdrawals over 5 years, $228,568, all authorized using a power of attorney that Michael Thompson obtained, under the guise of estate planning. Susan continued pulling documents, laying them out one by one. The power of attorney, the digital authorization forms with IP addresses traced to Michael's home, Michael's bank statements showing deposits that match the withdrawal dates, the casino ATM records, the forensic accountant's report, the statements from my financial advisor and my CPA, the police report documenting Michael's intimidation attempt, each piece of evidence laid out on the table like cards in a hand. Undeniable, irrefutable. Michael stared at the documents. His jaw was tight. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Patricia looked at the evidence. She picked up the casino ATM report. She read it. She set it down. "Mr. Ross," she said, turning to Michael's attorney, "does your client dispute any of these facts?" David shifted in his seat. He whispered something to Michael. Michael shook his head. David cleared his throat. "My client acknowledges that he made withdrawals from his mother's account. However, they were authorized under a valid power of attorney." "For estate planning purposes," Susan interrupted, "not for personal use, and certainly not for gambling." Patricia held up a hand. "Let's stay focused on facts, not arguments." She looked at Michael. "Mr. Thompson, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why did you take this money?" Michael didn't look up. His voice was quiet. "I was desperate. The business was failing. I thought I could fix it before Mom noticed. I thought—" He stopped. He took a breath. "I thought I could pay her back." "Over 5 years?" I said. The words came out before I could stop them. "You took money from me for 5 years, Michael." He looked at me then, for the first time since he'd walked into the room. His eyes were red. "I know, Mom. I know I messed up." "You didn't mess up," I said. My voice was steady, firm. "You stole from me. There's a difference." Patricia intervened gently. "Mrs. Thompson, let's let me guide the conversation, but I appreciate your perspective." She turned back to Michael. "Mr. Thompson, where did the money go?" Michael's attorney started to answer, but Patricia shook her head. I asked your client, Mr. Ross. She looked at Michael. Where did it go? Gambling, Michael said. His voice cracked. I have a problem. I've been going to Gamblers Anonymous. I'm getting help. That's commendable, Patricia said. But it doesn't change what happened. You took $228,000 from your mother's retirement account. You gambled away $140,000 of it. The rest went to failed business expenses and personal use. Is that correct? Yes, Michael whispered. Patricia picked up another document. And you also purchased an investment property with a $60,000 down payment, money that came from one of these withdrawals. Yes. That property is now in foreclosure? Yes. Patricia set the document down. She looked at both attorneys. Let's talk about restitution. Ms. Chen, what is your client seeking? Susan didn't hesitate. Full restitution of $228,568, plus legal fees of approximately $30,000, and a permanent no-contact order regarding any financial matters. David spoke up. Your Honor, Ms. Gomez, my client doesn't have that kind of money. The investment property equity is approximately $12,000. He's employed, but his salary is modest. He's a single father supporting 2 children. His ex-wife has custody, Susan interjected, and those children are Linda's grandchildren. Mr. Thompson used them as pawns, telling them their grandmother was too sick to see them, to keep her isolated while he continued stealing. Patricia raised her hand again. Facts, please. Emotions later. She turned to David. What can your client pay? David conferred with Michael. He turned back to Patricia. We can offer the property equity, $12,000, and we can propose a payment plan, $300 a month for 10 years. Total, $48,000 over 10 years. That's 26% of what he stole, Susan said. Her voice was cold. My client worked 43 years. She can't rebuild her retirement. She's 67 years old. This offer is unacceptable. Patricia looked at me. Mrs. Thompson, what do you want out of today? I looked at her. I looked at Michael. He was crying now, quietly, tears running down his face. Part of me wanted to reach across the table, to comfort him like I'd done his whole life. But I didn't. I kept my hands in my lap. I want him to understand what he did to me, I said. I worked 43 years. I skipped vacations. I drove the same car for 12 years. I saved every penny so I could retire with dignity. He took that from me. I can't retire now. I have to work at 67 because of what he did. I paused. I want as much money back as possible, and I want him to stay away from my finances. Forever. Patricia nodded. She turned to Michael. Mr. Thompson, do you understand what your mother is saying? Michael nodded. He wiped his eyes. I understand, he said. His voice was barely audible. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hate myself for this. Sorry isn't enough, I said. The words came out firm, clear. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you have to face consequences. But you weren't sorry when you took the money. You weren't sorry for 5 years. Michael's face crumpled. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I love you too, I said. And it was true. I did love him. I always would. But you're also a thief, and I can't have you in my life if you won't make this right. Patricia called a 15-minute break. Michael tried to approach me in the hallway outside the conference room. Mom, please, he started. I need you to stay away from me right now, I said. I walked to the other end of the hall. Susan came with me. You're doing great, she said quietly. Don't back down. When we reconvened, Patricia had a proposal. I've reviewed the financial documents, she said. Here's what I believe is fair. The investment property equity, $12,000 liquidated immediately. Mr. Thompson's car, approximately $8,000 in trade-in value, also liquidated. A portion of Mr. Thompson's current 401k, $15,000, withdrawn as a penalty distribution. She paused. That's $35,000 immediately. Then wage garnishment of 25% for 10 years. Based on Mr. Thompson's current salary of approximately $48,000 annually, that's $12,000 per year, or $1,000 per month. Over 10 years, $120,000. Total restitution, $155,000. Susan started to object. That was still only 68% of what was stolen. But Patricia held up a hand. I'm not finished. I'm also recommending that if Mr. Thompson misses 2 consecutive payments, or if he commits any further financial crimes, the criminal complaint that's currently attached to this civil case will be automatically filed. No second chances. He'll face felony elder abuse charges, 5 to 10 years in prison. Does everyone understand? David looked at Michael. Michael nodded slowly. We'll accept those terms, David said. Susan looked at me. I nodded. It wasn't everything, but it was more than I'd hoped for. My client accepts, Susan said, with one additional condition, a permanent no-contact order regarding financial matters. Mr. Thompson cannot contact Linda Thompson about money, accounts, or anything financial. All communication goes through attorneys. And, I added, he can have supervised contact with Emma and Jake through Lisa, but not through me. I'm not ready for that. Patricia made notes. Agreed. I'll draft the settlement agreement. Both parties will sign today before leaving. Mr. Thompson, do you understand that if you violate these terms, you will face criminal prosecution? Yes, Michael said. His voice was hollow. Patricia stood. I'll have the documents ready in 30 minutes. Wait here. After she left, the room was silent. Michael sat across from me, his attorney beside him. Susan was on my right. 4 people who used to be a family, now just strangers negotiating consequences. Michael looked at me. I meant what I said, Mom. I'm sorry. I know you're sorry, I said. I hope you get the help you need. I hope you become the person you're supposed to be. But I can't be part of your recovery. I have to take care of myself now. He nodded. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He just sat there, his shoulders slumped, staring at the table. Patricia came back with the documents. She placed them in front of us. Susan and David reviewed them. Susan nodded to me. I signed. Michael signed. Patricia witnessed the signatures. This agreement is now binding, she said. Mr. Thompson will begin liquidating assets within 30 days. The first wage garnishment will begin within 60 days. Mrs. Thompson, you'll receive payment through the court system to ensure compliance. Michael stood to leave. His attorney gathered the papers. Michael paused at the door. He looked back at me one more time. I love you, Mom, he said. I love you too, I said. But that's not enough anymore. He left. The door closed behind him, and I sat there in that conference room, Susan beside me, the signed settlement agreement on the table in front of me. 4.5 hours of mediation, $155,000 in restitution, 55% of what he'd stolen. Not everything, but something. Justice, in its imperfect form. Susan started packing up the documents. I just sat there. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Relieved, maybe, but mostly tired. You did it, Susan said softly. You held your ground. Did I? I asked. I still lost half my retirement. You got more than most people do in these cases, Susan said, and you held him accountable. That matters. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there feeling the weight of 42 years of motherhood shift into something new, something harder, something necessary. Susan drove me home. The settlement would take 60 days to process. The first payment would come through the court system. I'd start receiving $1,000 a month for 10 years. If he kept paying, if he didn't violate the order, if he stayed out of trouble, a lot of ifs. But it was done. The case was settled. My son was legally obligated to pay me back for stealing my retirement, and I had to figure out what came next. 4 months later, late March, The first payment had come through the court system in January, $35,000 from the liquidated property equity and Michael's car. I'd used it to pay off the credit card debt I'd accumulated during the legal process. I'd rebuilt my emergency fund. I had money in my checking account again. Not much, but something. The garnishment payments started in February, $1,000 a month, direct deposit, every 15th of the month. February's payment came on time. March's payment came on time. It wasn't the retirement I'd planned, but I was managing. I downsized. The 3-bedroom ranch was too big, too expensive to maintain on Social Security and $1,000 a month. I found a 2-bedroom condo overlooking a small lake. Smaller, simpler, but it was mine. I could afford it. I'd moved in late February. Margaret had helped me pack. Lisa had helped me unpack. Emma and Jake had carried boxes up the stairs. It felt like a new beginning. Not the one I'd imagined, but a beginning nonetheless. The legal protections were in place. The settlement agreement was filed with the court. The no-contact order was official. Michael couldn't contact me about financial matters. All communication had to go through attorneys. I'd updated my estate documents. My will now named Lisa as executor. Emma and Jake were the sole beneficiaries. Everything I had would go to them when I died, held in trust until they turned 25. I'd also revoked every power of attorney I'd ever signed. I'd filed paperwork with my bank, with my new 401k administrator, with every financial institution. No one could access my accounts but me. I'd set up security alerts. If anyone tried to log in from a different device, I'd get a text immediately. I'd learned. I wouldn't be vulnerable again. As for Michael, I hadn't spoken to him since the mediation. I'd heard through Lisa that he was working 2 jobs now to make the garnishment payments. He was still in Gamblers Anonymous, still in therapy. She said he asked about me sometimes, asked if I was okay. I told Lisa she didn't need to tell me. His recovery was his responsibility, not mine. I hoped he got better. I really did. But I couldn't be part of it. That door was closed. Margaret came over twice a week. Coffee on Tuesday mornings, casseroles on Thursday evenings. She'd become more than a neighbor. She was family now. Chosen family. She'd been there when I needed someone, when I was too ashamed to ask for help. Now she was just there, checking in, making sure I was eating, making sure I wasn't isolating myself. One Tuesday morning, she brought coffee and muffins to my new place. We sat on my small balcony overlooking the lake. "I'm proud of you, honey," she said. "You saved yourself." I looked at her. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. She squeezed my hand. "Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." Susan Chen sent me a card in February. "Congratulations on your first payment," it said. Inside, she'd written a note. "You turned your pain into strength. That takes courage. If you ever want to speak at one of our elder law seminars, let me know. Your story could help others." I'd thought about it. Maybe someday. For now, I was still processing everything that had happened. But I stayed in touch with Susan. She emailed me quarterly to check that the garnishment payments were coming through. They were. Michael hadn't missed one yet. Susan had told me during our last call, "Most people in these cases get nothing. You got justice. That's rare." I appreciated her perspective. She'd fought for me when I didn't know how to fight for myself. Lisa had become the daughter I'd never had. We talked every week. She brought Emma and Jake over twice a month, sometimes more. The kids would spend Saturday afternoons with me. We'd bake cookies. We'd walk around the lake. Jake would tell me about soccer. Emma would tell me about school. They didn't ask about their father much. Lisa had explained the situation to them in age-appropriate terms. "Your dad made some mistakes with money. Grandma had to take legal action to protect herself. They're not talking right now, but they both still love you." It was enough. The kids understood that families were complicated, that love didn't mean accepting bad behavior. Lisa had done that, taught them healthy boundaries, something I'd never taught Michael. One Saturday, after the kids had gone home, Lisa stayed for tea. "The kids need you," she said. "I need you too. Your family." I looked at her. "You've always been family," I said. "I should have listened to you years ago. I'm sorry." She shook her head. "You weren't ready to hear it, but you're here now. That's what matters." I'd set up a small trust fund for Emma and Jake, $10,000 initially, part of that first $35,000 payment. I added $100 a month from the garnishment payments. It wasn't much, but by the time they were ready for college, it might be enough to help. Tom, my financial advisor, had helped me structure it properly. He sent me quarterly updates. "You're on track," his latest email said. "Your budget is holding. Your emergency fund is growing. You're going to be okay, Linda." I trusted him. He'd been checking in every few months since the settlement, just making sure I was managing, just making sure I knew I had support. 3 months after the mediation, I received a letter. Plain envelope, Michael's handwriting. I almost didn't open it, but I did. It was short. "Mom, I know you don't want to hear from me. I'm writing anyway. I'm 6 months sober from gambling. I go to meetings every day. I'm working 2 jobs to make your payments. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I destroyed your trust. But I want you to know. I'm trying to be better. Not for you, for me, and for my kids. I hope someday you can forgive me. But I understand if you can't. Michael." I read it twice. I sat with it for a week. I thought about responding. But in the end, I didn't. I told Susan about the letter. Technically, it wasn't about financial matters, so it didn't violate the no contact order, but it felt close. Susan said, "You don't owe him a response. If he stays current on payments, that's all the response he needs." I agreed. I filed the letter away. I didn't throw it away. He was still my son, but I didn't reread it. I didn't dwell on it. I'd made peace with something. I hoped he got better. I really did. But my forgiveness wasn't necessary for his recovery, and his recovery wasn't necessary for my peace. I could hope for his healing and still maintain my boundaries. Those 2 things could coexist. The other thing that had changed? I wasn't alone anymore. I had Margaret's daily check-ins. I had Lisa and the kids every other Saturday. I had the senior center support group once a month. I'd kept going after that first meeting. I had Tom sending quarterly emails. I had Susan checking in about payments. I had a small life, a modest life. But it was mine, and nobody was taking advantage of me. It had been 4 months since the mediation. The money came in every month, $1,000 on the 15th like clockwork. The grandkids visited every other Saturday. I worked part-time at the library on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 20 hours a week, shelving books, helping patrons, earning a little extra income. And sometimes, when I was making my coffee in the morning, sitting on my balcony looking out at the lake from my new condo, I thought about the life I'd planned versus the life I had. They weren't the same. I'd lost half my retirement. I was working at 67 instead of traveling. I lived in a smaller place. I saw my son's name on court documents instead of at family dinners. But I was managing. I was independent. I had boundaries. I had peace. Some days that was enough. Some days it had to be. I live alone now. A 2-bedroom condo on the 3rd floor of a building overlooking a small lake. It's quieter than the ranch house. Smaller. But it's mine. I can afford it on Social Security, the garnishment payments, and my part-time income from the library. I work Tuesdays and Thursdays, 20 hours a week, shelving books, helping patrons find what they're looking for. It's not what I imagined doing at 67, but I like it. I like having somewhere to go. I like having a purpose beyond managing my own survival. The garnishment payments come on the 15th of every month, $1,000. They've been on time for 4 months now. I don't know if Michael will keep paying for 10 years. I don't know if he'll stay out of trouble. But for now, the money comes, and I'm managing. I budget carefully. Tom, my financial advisor, sends me quarterly updates. "You're doing well, Linda," his last email said. "Your emergency fund is growing. You're going to be okay." I believe him. Not because I'm naive anymore, but because I've learned to trust the right people. People who've earned it. I used to think being a good mother meant always saying yes. I thought it meant sacrificing everything for your child. I thought it meant protecting them from consequences. But I learned something these past months. Love doesn't mean giving everything away. Love means knowing when to stop, knowing when to say no, knowing when to choose yourself. I chose myself, and I don't regret it. Some people might judge that. Some people might say a real mother would forgive, would let it go, would put family first. But I put family first for 42 years, and it almost destroyed me. So now I put myself first. And that's not selfish. That's survival. I updated my will. Michael is no longer the executor. Lisa is. Everything I have, the condo, whatever's left in my accounts when I die, the small trust fund I've set up for Emma and Jake, it all goes to my grandchildren, held in trust until they're 25, protected. Michael won't get a penny, not because I hate him, but because I learned. You protect what matters. And what matters now is making sure my grandchildren have something their father can't touch, something safe. I also volunteer now. Once a month, I go to the senior center. I sit in a circle with 7 or 8 other people who've experienced financial abuse. I share my story. I tell them what I did, how I built the case, how I found an attorney, how I got some of my money back. And afterward, people come up to me. They ask for Susan's card. They ask if it's too late for them to try. I tell them it's never too late. I tell them you don't have to accept it just because it's family. That's what I've learned to do. Turn my pain into something useful. I can't get back the $200,000 Michael stole, but I can help someone else avoid losing theirs, or help them fight back if they've already lost it. That matters. That's something. If you're reading this or listening to this and something feels wrong, trust that instinct. Don't ignore the red flags like I did. Don't make excuses for someone just because you love them. Love them, yes, but protect yourself. Set boundaries. Check your accounts. Read the documents before you sign them. Ask questions. And if it's already happened, if someone's already taken from you, don't be ashamed. It's not your fault. I was ashamed for months. I thought I'd failed as a mother. But I didn't fail. He failed me. And once I understood that, I could fight back. Here's what I wish I'd known earlier. You can love someone and still hold them accountable. You can grieve the relationship you thought you had and still protect yourself. You can be a good mother or a good person and still say no. Those things can coexist. They have to coexist. Because the alternative is losing yourself completely. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have filed the case or tried to handle it privately? Would you have settled early or pushed for mediation? Let me know in the comments. And if you've been through something similar, if your child, your spouse, your caregiver, anyone has taken from you financially, know that you're not alone. There are attorneys who specialize in this. There are support groups. There are people who will believe you. You don't have to stay silent. I'm 67 years old. I lost $200,000 to my own son. I work part-time at a library to make ends meet. I live in a condo a third the size of my old house. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. Some days that's enough. Some days it has to be. I sit at my kitchen table in the mornings now, the small one in my condo. I make my coffee. I look out at the lake. The sun rises over the water. And I think about the life I planned versus the life I have. They're not the same. The life I planned had travel and freedom and grandchildren visiting a big house with a garden. The life I have has a part-time job and a small balcony and supervised visits that had to be negotiated through lawyers. But it's my life. I chose it. I fought for it. And nobody's taking it from me again. Tomorrow I volunteer at the library. Thursday, my book club meets. Saturday, Emma and Jake come over. We're going to bake cookies. Next month, I speak at the senior center again. This is my life now. Small, modest, but mine. And some days, most days, that's enough.